No, but I also don't think that these people exist in stagnation, and I don't think that these percentages are a permanent thing. I think that they can easily change, and we think that that's what you needed to deal with in today's debate. Why people aren't always stagnant and set in stone. We think realistically, we want people to change, but that's only going to happen if they get convinced to change. How does that happen? Well, it happens when you go through elected legislatures, because that's when you're trying to convince people, not when you're just trying to lobby courts and lobby people through that measure. So we don't think that they've contended on that ground, and we think on that way, Australia is losing the debate.
Well, I've got information.
No thanks. So what else did we tell you? Well, we also told you that if you're going to bypass the majority, then you're simply going to end up with a situation that's more harmful for your people. So this brings me on to what I want to talk about in today's debate. And that's about what happens if courts do rule in your favor. So let's assume that courts are going to be super effective. Let's assume social movements can create the change, even with their pro bono lawyer versus the huge state. And let's assume that these courts are always going to rule in favor of these social movements. Well, the problem that we have here is that we think courts rule in isolation. And this is an analysis that Australia has already done, except they assumed this was a really good thing, right? They told us that this makes courts objective because they don't have to consider multiple issues, multiple way-ups of resources. They can just view an issue in isolation. We think realistically, that's not always a good thing, right? Let's look at an issue of austerity in Europe. We'd say that whilst in isolation a court may rule that pensioners are deserving of a continual payment to them, that pensioners are deserving of payments for their well-being and their long-term livelihood, we'd say realistically these need to be viewed as a whole, and I'll take you in a second. That realistically, it's actually a bad idea if courts can view certain issues in isolation and thereby necessarily compromise on what the government recognizes is best for the society as a whole.
So if viral videos and Twitter are so effective, why are we all waiting for the Supreme Court of America to overturn the Defense of the Marriage Act?
Well, sir, if courts are so effective, why haven't gay rights movements used them already and just got all the change? We think realistically, if you look at the states that support gay marriage, they aren't the ones that just have courts that support it, they're the ones that have peoples that support it. That's why we tell you that it's about getting majority support. It's about getting the groundswell. It's about getting bottom-up change. We tell you that the reason Vermont has gay rights is because it has a gay-friendly population, not because it just has a court that said that they can have gay rights. So that's what you're going to need to deal with. So furthermore, what we tell you is that if they're ruling in isolation, they're able to necessarily harm the majority. Not just the majority in terms of the people who want to stop gay rights, but the majority in terms of people who need an allocation of government spending, that need a working and functioning government, and therefore a government that can make its own independent decisions, not just be overruled by a court. We'd say that realistically, allowing courts to steamroll governments can be very bad when governments are making decisions considering everything in the debate. So in conclusion, the fact that courts make decisions in isolation is not always a good thing. We'd say that it necessarily creates compromises for governments, not always compromises that they can afford. We'd say that that's bad. No thanks. So what does this mean for buying to courts? Well, we tell you that because they want to steamroll the majority, they necessarily create problems with buying to the laws that they're trying to pass. So we tell you that the importance of the buy-in to these laws in the courts is that if people don't respect them, then they just realistically don't create the change, right? So if you have women's rights laws or gay rights laws, but you have a police force that still hates these people, that doesn't believe they have the correct, that doesn't believe they have the right to certain access to rights, to certain freedoms, we tell you that you're just not going to have realistic change. That's why in Uganda, even though they prevented the passing of the death penalty, you still have gay people being stoned to death. Why? Because on paper, you don't have that necessary bad change, but in reality, you still have a population that doesn't buy into what the courts are telling them. That's why realistically, we think that if you subvert the groundswell, if you subvert the bottom-up change, what you necessarily do is you prevent people from creating real change. You allow them to get paper change without an actual change. We say that that's dangerous for the social movements, it's dangerous for minorities, and it means that people aren't going to respect court rulings, aren't going to respect the rights that these people have. They'll become even more antagonistic than they already are. So if Australia wants to protect social movements, ladies and gentlemen, they would force them to go through elected legislatures.
Thank you very much. I now welcome back Australia to the first speaker.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is true that the power to convince is critical in democracies. But it's also true that democracies don't exist just to serve majorities. It's true that just because the majority of Americans opposed gay marriage in the 1990s, that doesn't mean that access to that right is worthless for the minorities who ask for it. And that even now, just because a powerful minority of Americans want access to gay marriage, that doesn't mean that the majority of Americans should have their rights, or at least their opinions, undermined by the functioning of that parliamentary democracy. In a debate that required engagement between comparing legislatures and the courts, there was insufficient response to the actual explanation of the way courts worked in relation to legislatures from the opposition team. This debate comes down to two key questions. First, on whether courts can get faster change, and second, on whether courts can get more sustainable change in the context of granting social rights for social movements that need them. On the first question of courts and this pace of change that they're able to achieve, we looked at courts as being the first to get and secure gay marriage in several states in the United States. But also the reality that under the status quo, it was the United States Supreme Court that was about to consider the appeal of Proposition 8. Not the legislature in the US, not the Congress that is full of Republican members who oppose even discussing that issue in the Congress in the first place. But more importantly, we told you that there were failed views of democracy that existed in this term. That even if they were able to prove that it was important that we cooperated with the public will, that public will wasn't actually being exercised by the legislature as it existed. We said for people who didn't prioritise issues of minority rights, like if someone who supported the access of gay people to gay marriage, but wouldn't vote for another party just to get that issue. If you were a left-leaning Democrat who supported gay marriage, but you also wanted a lot of left-wing other policies, then you might not vote for a Greens Party member, for example, in another constituency. And we said that priority was an issue in this debate. But even if the majority supported it, we showed you that in a lot of cases, that still wasn't enough to ensure that change was secured. So all of their talk about democracy was actually a principle that they couldn't even fulfill in their conception of delivering social change. We also told you that the ability of courts to discuss and look at issues in isolation meant that you could go around that problem of having priorities that don't necessarily line up in the way of social movements. And what did we hear from the other team? That this compromises the ability of governments to make economic decisions. Unfortunately, when you make the decision about whether you should legalise gay marriage or allow women to pursue abortions, first, there aren't many economic complications that happen as a result of that. But even if they were, it would be important that the courts would protect those rights over marginal economic considerations of the federal government. That's why minority rights were important in this debate, because we recognise that even if the majority felt less severely or less importantly about certain other issues that they might have thought were more important, that the rights of minorities to access basic rights was something that stood in this debate. There was never engagement on that basic principle of the case that we presented to you at First Speaker. It needs to come, but it's probably too late at this point. What did they say in response? They said first, judges are appointed by political parties. At best, that made what we support more like what they supported, as opposed to actually making what we supported ineffective. But second, we told you that the status of independence that judges had, the fact that they don't have to successively be re-elected every 4 years, meant that they could change their views, for example. Like Justice Souter, no response on that example. But more importantly, the fact that judges weren't re-elected meant that they could defend the minority rights that didn't necessarily have majority support. And they were the rights like gay marriage, even if it has marginal majority support. Or even things like rights that could be protected within certain jurisdictions, so there's a majority of opposing people or a majority of conservative people. They said that the courts are too slow. We think the courts get through a ton of cases. They get through stuff far faster than legislatures. And so here again, they didn't actually respond in terms of comparing legislatures to courts. But second, if we even make that comparison to legislatures, the fact that the United States Congress is not even considering legislation on gay marriage at the moment shows that it's not effective as the courts. And finally, they talked about accessibility, that you needed lots of donors when you wanted to pursue a court case, for example, in the upcoming gay marriage case in the United States Supreme Court. That was in total contradiction, but as though ignorant of our material at first, that you needed massive lobbying power if you wanted to get legislation passed in the United States Congress. But because the barriers to entry of that lobbying power was so much greater, where you had so many more people to lobby for, meant that was a much harder thing to do in the legislature than in the courts. But second, we talked about the obstructions of the media process that weren't as effective in relation to the court process. No response to that material, even though it came out at first speaker. We told you that it's important that you unify social movements through access to the courts. No response to that material either, even though we brought it up at second speaker. What they did say was, it's expensive to buy a good lawyer. That's why it's good to unify social movements through something like a court action. That's why it's good to have a lot of people who can spend money on one issue rather than trying to lobby tons of different members of Congress. That's why it's good that, for example, the gay marriage lobby movement in America does have tons of money, therefore can afford to spend it on buying good lawyers so that they can actually convince a case, instead of trying to persuade racist conservatives or anti or homophobic conservatives that that's a good idea in the first place. I'll take you in a second. We've proven that courts can get that faster change, but the second issue in this debate is whether courts can get more sustainable change. Yes?
You're focusing on unifying social movements within themselves rather than getting the society behind them to unify with the social movement.
First, again, that's ignoring our material, that the fundamental rights of those minorities are the most important thing in this debate and the thing that we preserve better than you do. But second, we think that unity is important to the way you persuade other people that your cause is relevant. We think that if you're not united within the gay marriage movement, then it's harder to coordinate funds in order to have advertising campaigns, for example. But on the issue of sustainable change, this is where that material that POI relates to came up in this debate. They said if people don't agree with your change, then you need to convince them of it. We said that both sides needed to convince people that their change was good, and they never necessarily explained why it happening through the legislature meant that you had to explain that better, when those legislatures were just pandering to racist or homophobic minorities in the first place. But second, they brought up examples like mobs outside abortion clinics that were apparently protesting against Roe versus Wade, as opposed to the actual fact that women were getting abortions in those clinics. We said first, they had to compare that to what they conceivably supported, which was either that you would get later a footing of that right of women to access abortion, or that, as under the status quo, there would be no law in the federal US jurisdiction to allow people to access abortion. But secondly, the assumption by their side that people were just protesting the authority of the court as opposed to protesting the fact that abortions were happening there were relevant in this debate, because they would still protest that under either model, regardless of which avenue of the law it went through. We then heard it second that people don't cooperate with the laws, and that was the reason why it was more important to get the legislature to do it. They never explained why that was more likely to happen under the courts than under the legislature. That they obfuscated with examples like Ugandan gays, who wouldn't be any more equal under a court-recognized equality than a legislative one, because they never had equality in the first place. But that equality was something that we protected in a more fundamental way. They haven't responded to it. We're proud to propose.
Thank you very much. I now welcome the third speaker of South Africa.
Australia says that the majority is wrong. They're relying on a Supreme Court where judges are appointed based on this majority as their solution. They tell us that they claim to represent democracy and the individual rights. But they make a situation where democracy is about who can pay for the better lawyer as opposed to who can get the most people on their side, who can best represent the citizens of that nation. They talk about getting power through unity, but they want to divide powerful lobbies in favor of individual specific court cases. Ladies and gentlemen, Team South Africa came here with the team line that running to the courts may get you a judgment, but it will not get you legitimate and effective change. Which they seem to think that their burden was only to prove fast change in today's debate, and only engage with what's going to be effective, what's going to be legitimate, what's going to be sustainable within like the last minute of their third speaker's speech. That's not what this debate is about, ladies and gentlemen. Now, in my substantive matter, I'll be looking at I'll be looking at the three criteria. First, I'll be looking at acceptable change. So even if they were correct in saying that these Supreme Courts are just going to be cranking out super effective change, how this isn't necessarily acceptable, isn't necessarily democratic, and isn't necessarily what we want from a democracy. And then my next issue is I'll be looking about what's going to be more efficient. So I'll be looking about in terms of bringing about legislation and social change. So first, acceptable change. Now they cannot just come up here and say, well, the majority is just wrong. We think the reason what we're talking about, abortion, the environment, there's a reason these are still debating topics that we debate at world schools in previous years. Because there is no sort of objective truth. There's not any objective right about what should be in legislation.